For the last few weeks, I've made jokes and jokes about all the injuries happening in the NFL and how it's so much easier to avoid them in DFS, but this is getting ridiculous. At this point, it's just going to end up being a gauntlet every week to see who has the most healthy players at the end of the day. Are you sad yet? I am. Let's build some lineups. Happy Friday. Good morning. Good evening. I don't know when you listen to our show, but this is the DFS Academy presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Ryan Weisse, and we've hit the point in the season where I feel like it's probably time to welcome some new viewers to the show. I'm sorry your season sucks. DFS is still going to keep it interesting for you. And I have two very smart people who are going to help you build some lineups. When we focus on DFS, we separate things into GPP tournaments, guaranteed prize pools, and cash games, more head-to-heads and 50-50s. Kelly handles the GPP. Kelly, how are you doing this evening? Kelly's been drinking, and it's her birthday today. So first and foremost, you will see her Twitter handle if you're watching us on YouTube, or if you just happen to be listening to us. It's at Kelly in Phoenix. Go throw her a follow if you're not already, and wish her happy birthday right now.
How am I feeling is feeling that we're going to talk about it later, but man, I'm a little bummed. Bummed.
Me too. My streak was ended last week. I had been third. I was a happy second loser every single week in this contest, made a little bit of money. Rachel stole that from me on DraftKings last week. It's no fun.
Good for her, though.
Yeah, exactly. So Kelly's drinking and celebrating her birthday. Austin, how are you doing this evening?
I guess that's just rubbing off on you too. I'm doing great. Last week was actually my worst week overall on the DFS betting streets this year. We're still positive on the year, which is nice, but last week was not the best of weeks for me, particularly in cash. It was a tough cash week, and this week's also going to be tough, but I think we can still find some value on the slate.
Yeah, my budget management, I had been doing so well on DraftKings that I kind of laid off on FanDuel and pivoted to DraftKings and had my worst week ever. Did not cash a single contest last week due to some non-performance in the Baltimore Ravens passing game that we will, as Kelly mentioned, discuss a little bit later. But yeah, it was an interesting week, week 8, and plenty of injuries, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk DFS. And before we get started, I want to remind everybody, or let the new people know, we don't just talk DFS, we play DFS. You can play against us on both DraftKings and FanDuel. You will find links in the description of this video, but also in Austin's article that's going to drop later today, and Kelly's article that's going to drop tomorrow. Essentially, if there's a DFS article on the Club Fantasy website, there will be links, and they are in the description of this video. Contests keep getting really close to filling. They're not filling yet, but they're little $2 contests. They're a nice little way to help build up your bankroll if you can beat us, and you get your name mentioned at the end of the show. What better do you want from that? We start with answers to the test. This is taking a look at last week's winning lineup and slate breaker. Last week's Millionaire Maker scored 237 points. Few names on here, not very surprising. Couple of names, very surprising, especially the quarterback wide receiver duo, just because I didn't think it was going to happen. And if I don't think it's going to happen, it's a surprise. Dak Prescott, preview of what's to come. Dak Prescott, Alvin Kamara, Breece Hall, CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Michael Gallup, Trey McBride, D-Hop, and the Seattle defense. CeeDee Lamb, the slate breaker, just absolutely went off again in a matchup that he wasn't supposed to win. Austin, I'm going to get started with you here. I don't even know what it's called when you triple stacking. Is there ever a world where it's a great idea to throw a quarterback and two of his wide receivers into a lineup? I mean, obviously it made this guy $1 million last week.
Yes. I mean, like if that offense just hits that day, then it's a totally viable option in tournaments. It's not something I typically do in cash because it's high risk, high reward, right? If the game hits, then you're great. But if it doesn't, you are screwed. I think, you don't always have to do it, but sometimes it's just the right play. And it so happened to work out this week for the winner of the Millionaire Maker.
Yeah, I know we were big last week, Kelly, on Kamara, Breece Hall, and I believe AJ Brown all got very good mention on the show. Someone who didn't get good mention, who I don't know if you had thought about Trey McBride comes out of nowhere for your Arizona Cardinals. I think this was his first week with Zach Ertz on the IR, and he was the leader of that tight end room. And man, was he the leader of that tight end room. Tight end 1 on the week.
Yeah, it was pretty much the only. Well, I won't say that because DeMercado made some really great inroads as well. But yeah, Trey McBride was outstanding, and I think it's going to have Ertz thinking about what's next. It's going to have the Cardinals thinking about what's next.
Yeah, I bet if he wasn't on IR, Ertz would have been dealt at the deadline, but that's just not a situation where someone's going to buy someone on the IR. I don't even know if they're technically allowed to buy someone on the IR, so it is what it is. Austin, do you have any takeaways when you look at a lineup like this?
I think interestingly is just like the chalk hit in terms of running backs, like Alvin Kamara and Breece Hall. They were some of the most common running backs in cash lineups, particularly Kamara. And same thing with AJ Brown. Like those 3 players were all played a lot. And so I think just like a common theme is like sometimes just don't overthink it when it comes to the tournament lineups. Like if there's a player who's just clearly the best player on the slate, you probably need them in your lineup, and you can find other ways to get difference. Like playing DeAndre Hopkins, like who thought that Will Levis was going to throw 3 touchdowns to that man?
Definitely caught me by surprise. And Kelly, when you look at a lineup like this, is this something you would typically see in some of your GPP builds?
Potentially. I mean, look at what I wanted to do with the Ravens last week.
It's a good point. You built this, just the wrong team.
I mean, potentially, especially looking at what the rostership was, what the projection of points were, what the combinations all look like together, I think is kind of what I'm looking at. And if I can get a value at one of those receivers, knowing that they're playing by committee, perhaps, which is something I talk about tonight, why not? Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. Guys, we get started with what we call top of the class. These are the high-priced players, typically above $8,000 that we are targeting in cash. That's going to be Austin's department, and tournaments, Kelly's department. You guys both went with names that hit last week, and I'm going to ask you the very serious question. Are we chasing last week's points, or are these players just unstoppable? And that's going to go for both of you. Austin, go ahead and get us started.
Yeah, so I first have AJ Brown, who is 8,600 on DraftKings. He is a little bit more expensive on FanDuel. He's at 9K on FanDuel. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of going with it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality here. Like it's not just last week for AJ Brown too, right? It's just been week after week. He's hitting 100 yards.
Record breaking.
Yeah, it is wild. And there is some nerves here of like, a little like, when's that streak going to end? You kind of want to, it's kind of like if when you're betting, you want to get out while you're ahead. But
yeah,
in this situation, I just feel like his target share is too good. He has the 7th highest target share on the season among wide receivers, which is incredible. And I do think this is going to end up being kind of a back and forth battle. To me, I'm looking at this divisional matchup, and I think both teams are going to kind of have to pass to keep up with each other. The Philadelphia Eagles are pretty stout on the ground. They're not as much in the secondary. So I also, frankly, am tempted of CeeDee Lamb. Like my choice this week in cash is, do I play AJ Brown or do I play CeeDee Lamb?
Okay.
And I frankly feel nervous about CeeDee Lamb, which is wild given what we just saw, but I just don't trust Dallas's offense. I don't feel like I can predict it as well. Whereas with the Eagles, like AJ Brown, like he's been the number one clear and away every week.
Is AJ Brown, because of his price point in cash, are you looking to stack with Jalen Hurts? And I'm going to repeat that question. Would you stack with Dak Prescott if you went the CeeDee Lamb route?
So I'm not stacking with Jalen Hurts because of the price point.
I figured.
I would consider stacking Dak Prescott because he's cheaper and it's easier for him to pay off his salary, but I'm probably not playing either just because there are some cheaper options at quarterback that I really want. But if I am stacking, I prefer the Dak CeeDee Lamb stack over Hurts and AJ Brown.
All right, I'm going to ask you one last question, Austin, and Kelly, I'm going to have you answer this question too, just because it just came to my mind. We have 3 high marquee games this week. The Eagles and the Cowboys, and then in London, we have the Dolphins and the Chiefs, and Sunday Night Football, we have the Bills and the Bengals. Austin, if you had to pick one of these games that's going to be that letdown game we have every year where we think it's going to be 60 points of offense and it ends up 16 points of offense? Which one of these 3 games would you think is going to be the letdown?
Oh, I want to say frankly, the Dallas Eagles game, because those 2 defenses can be
back and forth.
Painful. But I would actually guess the Miami Kansas City game, just because it's an international game and sometimes these games get a little weird and fluky with the time shift and whatnot. So I'm gonna go with that one.
Kelly, same question.
I think it's going to be our Germany game, Miami and Kansas City. We've seen what happens with jet lag. We've seen when the Jaguars stay weeks at a time abroad and then another team joins. I think it's bad news. It's going to be exciting for fans to see Mahomes play. I think that's the draw, but the game itself, I feel, may be lackluster for us.
I made the prediction on the Wednesday show, no pun intended, that there will be more interceptions than touchdown passes in that game. So we are all in agreement that that's going to be the letdown game. So 80 points, lock it in at this point. Kelly, let's get to it. Who's your high price player this week?
Yeah, of course. Let's talk about paying up for Alvin Kamara this week. Kamara, tomato.
Exactly.
8.1K on DraftKings, 9.2K on FanDuel. It's going to be on many, many rosters, which we often will see when it is this high priced, that most DFS managers are going to look for another option, but not this week. And it's because he's coming along with some projected points, the highest projected points for running backs this week, 17.6 on DraftKings and 14.8 fantasy points on FanDuel. I think what I like most about this is the opportunity of perhaps pairing it with Derek Carr, who has a very modest salary this week. And there's a little potential for some props here, Ryan, because this could be the 4th game in a row that Mr. Alvin has 100 or more scrimmage yards. So why not put that out there?
Yeah, he came out just shot out of a cannon from that suspension. It's working out really well for him in the passing game.
He's leading running backs. I don't have the stat in front of me at this second. Oh, yeah. Leading running backs, 39 catches so far this season.
Yeah, so highest in targets and highest in catches, despite playing 2 to 3 fewer games than most running backs. So
pretty incredible. We're all paying up, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's such a bad play whatsoever. All right, folks, we're moving on to the band nerds. These are I lost my tier here, $6,000 to $8,000 players. And the joke here is that they spend a little bit too much time practicing their instruments to get to the top of the class. Kelly, I'll let you get us started this time. You guys, well, I just noticed, Kelly, 2 of yours play for the same team, but you guys got a few more options here than we had last week.
Well, 2 of mine are kind of, I just burped.
That's okay.
2 of mine are same, basically. Yeah. You've got Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt, and they are playing by committee. It's happened last week. It'll probably happen this week. Jerome Ford, however, is questionable currently, but we're looking at mid to low range rostership, 5.3K on DraftKings, 7.K on FanDuel for both of them. Kareem Hunt, 5.5K. So there's only like a $200 difference between the 2. Fantasy points roughly around the same, around 10-ish for both of them. And they're facing Arizona, who happens to be, as we all witnessed, super weak against running backs, ranking 30th in the league. So I don't feel like you could lose picking either of those guys. So they're kind of lumped into one.
But you know I'm a jerk. So I'm on FanDuel and I have $7,000 left. Which one am I keeping?
I think Jerome Ford has the edge here, but he's questionable. So you just have to keep an eye on if you need to edit that.
Yeah, that decision could be made for me at this point. So
yeah.
And then I think this name, we just need to tell Austin to stop even deleting from the show sheet anymore.
Mark Andrews. Let's do it. You know what? To be fair, the tight end room this week looks so gross, like grosser than gross. But Mark Andrews is Mark Andrews. And even though it's said that Seattle is going to play tough on tight ends, tough on Mark Andrews. He manages to find a way to be open, and that's what we need him to do. 6.8K on DraftKings, 7.K on FanDuel, projected for 14.5 points. DraftKings, just 12 on FanDuel. But we want him to score another touchdown at a minimum. But he's had 4 of 5 games, 4 of his 5, you know what I'm saying, with 60 yards or more. It was the Arizona game. He only managed 40 yards.
But still found the end zone. Yeah, we learned our lesson about defenses are tough against tight ends when he took on the Browns. I can't use that to curse Mark Andrews anymore. It just doesn't work.
Doesn't.
Yeah, did not play out real well for us. Austin, Jonathan Taylor finally makes a list. Welcome back to football, buddy.
Yeah, it's about time. I mean, first off, I was surprised when I saw his salary this week on DraftKings, and then I was surprised when I looked back at his historic salary this year on DraftKings. So Jonathan Taylor, he's 6,400 on DraftKings this week, 8K on FanDuel. So he's more expensive on FanDuel. I still think he's worth the play there, given the rushing upside and the touchdown upside for him. But here's what I found interesting about Taylor. Since he returned in week 5, his price on DraftKings started at 6,800, moved down to 6,600, then 65, then 6,200, and it's now back up to 6,400. During that same time, his snap count has gone from 10 to 33 to 35 to 43. He's getting more snaps every week. I anticipate that to continue. And once again, we got the Carolina Panthers. They have been a great matchup for running backs all season long. Particularly in the last 5 weeks, they've been giving up slightly more points to opposing running backs since week 5. So I love this pick. I think it also enables you to save some salary. So my cash lineups are probably going to be filled with Alvin Kamara and Jonathan Taylor. A second player in this price range I have this week is CJ Stroud, who is 6,200 on DraftKings and 7K on FanDuel. Now, the quarterback situation this week is tough. There's 8 quarterbacks that are good, and a lot of them aren't even on the slate. Like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Tua Tagovailoa. None of them are on the main slate, and so the pickings are very slim for quarterback this week. There are some really cheap options that I think you could potentially make an argument for. Like, if you want to get down bad, you could try and get Aiden O'Connell in your lineup and just save money. I don't love that. I don't trust a lot of the cheap options this week, but CJ Stroud, he's been good. He had a down week last week, and it was still 12.9 points on DraftKings, which isn't great, but it doesn't kill your cash lineup. And Tampa Bay has been giving up the 3rd most points to quarterbacks since week 5. And in that span, it included a game against Desmond Ridder. I do believe CJ Stroud is better than Desmond Ridder. And so I feel pretty comfortable with Stroud in my lineup this week.
So my question to you that is, are we not concerned? I didn't get a chance to watch any of his game last week. I just know stats wise, he came out very flat from his bye week. Just did not do a whole lot against Carolina. No concern. This is a trend we're going to see in the middle of the season. Just a bad game. I
think it's just a bad game. And I think you have Carolina coming out of the bye week, and so they can cook up a defensive game plan that's more prepared for an opposing offense. So I think it's just a down week. I don't feel concerned about it.
Okay, perfect. We're going to move on to the bookworms. These are the $4,000 to $6,000 players, easily underestimated, but look out, they're sharp. And yes, I finally got it right.
He did it.
You know what, Kelly, you get us started on these ones. So these are the $4,000 to $6,000 players, and Kelly, you'll be handling the tournament plays.
4,000 to 6,000 players. I am liking Brandin Cooks this week.
Makes sense.
He is very affordable for us this week. I apparently did not put the pricing in our show sheet, but while Dak Prescott is focused mainly on getting the ball to CeeDee Lamb, we all know this. Last week, Cooks was supportive. He received 4 targets. It was good. He's projected for 8.3 fantasy points on DraftKings and 6.8 on FanDuel. Rostership's low at just around 5% projected. So why not? Why not throw Brandin Cooks in there for your, value type pick?
Yeah, we've been waiting for this Brandin Cooks emerge from this Dallas offense, and the Dallas's offense has just been bad leading up to this point outside of CeeDee Lamb. And we just wanted to see Brandin Cooks, hit that 1,000-yard mark with yet another team. And it didn't look great until last week.
Let him cook. Is that what the kids are saying?
I guess.
Well, that's what we're saying.
Exactly.
Zay Flowers. I
Yes.
know.
Yeah, you guys are really going back to the players that I liked last week. And I am a timid fantasy player, so I am not as courageous as you to go back and replay these guys.
Let me tell you why. Because this was his 5th game this season with 5 or more catches, despite there being very few passing yards. It was a running game for the Ravens. For Zay Flowers to still come out with 5 catches or more. He's also had 75 or more receiving yards in 2 of 3 home games this season, and the Ravens are playing at home this weekend. I will be there cheering them on. He's ranking 2nd among rookie wide receivers with 44 catches. So I feel like we cannot go wrong, and this salary is very manageable. 5.7K on DraftKings, 6.1K on FanDuel.
I think the thing here is, though, is there going to be anything left for him? Mark Andrews appearing in front of his wife for the first time, or his girlfriend. He's going to ball out. That's the joke. When your girlfriend shows up to the game, you ball out. Hopefully there'll be something left for Zay Flowers. Austin, you're going with Marquise Brown. You're bucking the Browns stats, but I love that you've dug deeper into maybe I don't want to call it recency bias, but the recency blindness to some of the stats that we like to point to.
Yeah, so I sent this tweet out on X. I guess I posted on X. The Cleveland Browns defense, they were great during the first 4 weeks of the season against opposing receivers. They were actually the toughest matchup against opposing receivers through weeks 1 through 4. But since then, they're giving up the 4th most DraftKings points to the
Did they play Baltimore in week 5? Is that when this whole thing started? Did Lamar ruin them?
I believe so. That's a really good point.
Too.
I think that's about when that happened. And honestly, this is a trend across a lot of teams. I noticed this week, all of the teams that were ranked 3rd through 6th in like the best matchups for receivers for season long, they're all now like averaging like some of the worst matchups for receivers now. So be a little careful when you're hitting those buttons, like looking just at the green or the red, because those are going to be a little bit, they could be skewed by how the first 4 weeks of the season went. And, teams are getting injured. Things are happening differently. So those might not hold up throughout the year. But also Marquise Brown is getting just a wild target share. By the way, he's 5,400 on DraftKings. He's 6,700 on FanDuel. He had 3 weeks in a row earlier this season where he got 10 targets in each game, which was freaking wild.
It's just funny how quiet it's been. Like, I haven't even known that. So.
Yeah, he's been quietly just getting a ton of targets. My biggest concern about this is that Clayton Tune is starting. But I think he's probably still going to get a bunch of targets. Like, I imagine that they're going to have to pass the ball to keep up in this game, and Marquise Brown is still going to get targets. So I'm not really worried. I need him to catch some balls. And if he does that, then we're good. He's cheap enough to do me a solid in cash this week.
And then your next player, I was circling this on the show sheet when I saw it, because when I compared our rankings, you and a lot of expert rankers have Chuba Hubbard ranked far higher than I do. I am just never bought into the Chuba Hubbard hype. I don't know what it is. Obviously, he's outplaying Miles Sanders right now. Convince me that I need to move him up my rankings.
I mean, some of this,
me here.
Yeah, some of the ranking conversation is just like emblematic of how gross the running back position is right now.
That's fair.
Given we have players like Christian McCaffrey on bye, and there's a decent amount of guys that are hurt. But yeah, Chuba Hubbard, he's leading the backfield in Carolina over the past couple of weeks, which is wild. Like the past 2 games, he has have both been season highs in his snap count, and so he's getting the opportunities. Indianapolis, who they're playing this week, has given up the most points to running backs since week 5, so it's a really great, the 3rd most points to running backs since week 5. So it is a really great matchup. He's 5K on DraftKings. He's only 6,500 on FanDuel. So his price is really nice. He's getting opportunities. He gets a couple of targets here and there. I just like the floor and the salary savings, and the matchup is good. Only thing here is I'm playing Jonathan Taylor. I don't love playing both running backs in my DFS lineups from a matchup because the game script that enables that to work isn't really like a good one for upside. But I think I'm going to make an exception this week because both Jonathan Taylor and Chuba Hubbard, not only do they get the carries, they get the targets. And so I think like if one team gets down, you're just going to see one of these running backs starting to get targets, and it's going to enable them to still hit their salary.
Miles Sanders' activeness in this game, whether he's hurt, because he's playing hurt right now, I think he'll be active in the game. That makes no difference to you when firing Chuba Hubbard up, correct? You think he's just outplaying him at this point?
I think he's just outplaying him. And honestly, like his salary is cheap enough. Like if he falls into the end zone, we're good. Even if Miles Sanders plays, like Hubbard has a good chance of falling into the end zone. And if that happens, then we feel good about him in cash, particularly because like that's gonna enable me to play Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, and AJ Brown, which I think are going to be enough to still allow me to cash in all of my cash lineups.
I think Austin's giving us a preview of the lineup he might be given at the end of the show. Speaking of which, you can play against Austin and Kelly and myself and a bunch of really great people from Club Fantasy and all over the place. Links are in the description of this video. $2 contest on FanDuel and on DraftKings. And again, you can find it in the description of this video and all DFS articles put out by Club Fantasy. We are getting close to the end of the show. It's time for the lower cost players. C's get degrees. These are the punt plays of the week. Austin, I'm going to let you take it home on the lineups. Go for it.
Yeah, so we're going back to Cade Otton. He's $3K on DraftKings and $4,900 on FanDuel. Houston has been awful against tight ends since week 5, and this includes playing the rest of the NFC South. They played Atlanta, who, I mean, they have good tight ends, but they don't use them. So it's impressive that Houston is garbage against tight ends, given that. New Orleans, who, by the way, when I talk about tight ends, Taysom Hill is included as a tight end. So like that accounts a little bit for this, but he was basically being used as a tight end / running back. It wasn't.
He's a running back. Let's be clear. Fantasy platforms need to fix this. But while he's a tight end, take advantage of it. Go for it.
Yeah, exactly. And then the Carolina Panthers, like I can't even remember who their other tight end is outside of Hayden Hurst. I think, is it Ian Thomas? Is he still in Carolina?
Tommy Tremble is the one who's actually been usurping Hayden Hurst. So.
Tommy Tremble got in the end zone against Houston Texans. So I feel good about Cade Otton. Also, he has a 83.1% route rate on dropback. So he's running a lot of routes when they're in passing situations, which is good opportunity for him. So I like the matchup. I like his opportunities. And again, he's cheap enough. Like he doesn't have to do much. Hopefully he falls into the end zone, but as long as he doesn't goose egg, we're probably doing fine.
And you got a defense for us, which you talked about the tight end matchups being kind of meh and the running back matchups with the injuries. I struggled with defenses this week, just where to put them. Who like the teams that you want to have bad matchups. The teams that are disgusting have good matchups. It's rough. And speaking of kind of disgusting teams with a good matchup.
Yeah. So New York Giants, they are 2,300 on DraftKings and 4K on FanDuel. So part of this is like they're cheap enough on DraftKings that, again, I don't, similar to last week with the Patriots, which worked out, by the way. I don't need them to do much.
Really well.
I don't need much from them. I need like 5 or 6 points. And here's a stat. Now, credit to the ESPN Fantasy Focus guys for saying this stat, but I want to repeat it here because it's really great. Las Vegas is one of 2 teams to not score 3 touchdowns in a single game this season. The other team is the New York Jets. So the Raiders are not scoring touchdowns. I don't feel great about their odds of scoring 3 touchdowns this week. I like Aiden O'Connell as a prospect, but in a second NFL start, I don't feel like he's probably going to like light the world on fire. Yeah. Also, I think we're starting to see this Giants defensive line get rolling. Like Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence, like those 2 guys are beasts, and they were all over the Jets last week. I mean, the amount of pressure that they were getting on Zach Wilson was bonkers. Las Vegas was giving up a ton of pressures in their primetime game this past week. So I think this is an ideal matchup. And what's wild about it to me is the Giants are the lowest priced defense on DraftKings, which is like just seeing the pressure rate that they've been getting. I don't understand how that's happening, because if they get 2 or 3 sacks in this game, like they're going to be fine. And Aiden O'Connell, he's a rookie. He might not be good at ball control right now. If he gets sacked, there's a good chance it's a sack fumble, and then you get Kayvon Thibodeau running it back for a touchdown, and all of a sudden the Giants have just like smashed their DFS salary. So I feel great about this matchup, and particularly the salary savings it gives me.
There we go. Kelly, I'm going to go over to you, and it's a player in common, but one of the things I love about doing a show with you two is you guys will like the same player, but for very, very different reasons. So tell me why you like Cade Otton out of Tampa Bay as well.
The least gross. Like, I really wanted to play TJ Hawkinson this week, but come on, can we really play any Vikings right now? No. The answer is no. Cade Otton, very easy to manage in your lineups this week. But what I like is when we look at Cade Otton against other tight ends in his same tier, because we know we have tiers of tight ends and how they play and what they cost us on our salaries and what they produce. He is the most consistent. He's had, I believe it's the last 3 weeks in a row, or 4+ fantasy points. And I know that sounds awful, but if you were to look at some of our other faves that come up in values, they are very hit and miss. And Cade Otton happens to be what I would call consistent. So we're going to get some consistency. Going to cost us a whole lot less. And this week, he's projected to bring us 6.2 fantasy points and DraftKings and 4.6 on FanDuel. But what I was thinking was if we have an opportunity for him to have, if he has more opportunity, I should say, it would be if Chris Godwin doesn't play. That opens up a little bit more. Does that mean he's going to come with like 8 fantasy points? No. But I think it's safe to say we're good for around 5 fantasy points with Cade Otton this week.
Yeah, I have to ask you both. And Kelly, I'll start with you here. Are we avoiding Taysom Hill because we don't believe he should be designated as a tight end? Is he overpriced? Are you worried about chasing last week's points? Because neither one of you brings Taysom Hill up, and I actually like him a lot against Chicago this week.
I've just never liked him.
That's fair. And that's so funny, though, because Joe Zolo on our Wednesday show, exact same way. If a question is X or Taysom Hill, it has to be X. He will never choose Taysom Hill when the question is asked.
I think I just got burned when it all came about with the dual designation, and it just left me salty, and I've been salty ever since. So,
Austin?
Yeah, I think for me, I am a little bit worried about Juwan Johnson coming back. And so I looked at him for a hot second for cash this week, but it feels like too much of a gamble to take in a cash lineup. But I'd be interested in Johnson in tournament lineup. And I think that part of the reason we saw Taysom Hill do so well the past couple of weeks is because Juwan Johnson has been out of the lineup.
Okay. And then Kelly, you have a defense that I've had a huge conundrum with when I was doing my rankings between the two sites this week, because the Falcons are priced very differently between the two sites. And on one of them, they are the highest priced defense this week.
Yeah, which makes me use girl math and say, well, if they're the highest price over here, but I can get them for much less over there, then I'm definitely going to play them over there. And that's exactly what my recommendation this week is going to be. I like the Falcons on underdog. I hate them on FanDuel. Go play the Baltimore Ravens on FanDuel at a pretty smoking price of 4.3K, but you're looking at like where I like it, around 3.7, still a little bit much for the Falcons for me, but it works. So I'm in. And I feel like DraftKings is like, hey, let's just be, smart about this. Let's be fair about this. And then
just make sure nobody plays them.
And then FanDuel's like, hey, this looks like it's going to be crazy. Let's rack it way up. Woo!
I like it. Austin, as a Falcons fan, do you feel obligated, no matter the price, just to honor them as the number one price defense on FanDuel? You have to get them into your lineup?
No, because I never play the most expensive defense.
Nor I.
But good job. proud of them. I don't know. I guess this is like the one win I get for the Falcons this year because
I was gonna say, and here's what I like is again, this is a hold your nose type week. We're all kind of learning that. Of the hold your nose defenses, the Falcons are the one that happens to be at home, Austin, and I think that plays in their favor.
Yeah, because that crowd in Atlanta, they really make it hard on opposing offenses. That's what we're known for.
They could. It's a really nice stadium. If they would stop selling, $2 hot dogs, maybe people would spend more time rooting for the game. No, great stadium though, for real. Guys, before we get to the end of the show where they're going to announce their lineups that they may or may not be playing against you if you join the contest, let's talk about prop bets. As Kelly alluded to earlier in the show, we have Prop Quiz brought to you by BetStamp. If you're not familiar with BetStamp, check the link in the description. It funnels all of your betting and DFS into one place to help you get the best bang for your bets. Basically, it'll let you see what sportsbooks and DFS sites are available in your area and also sign up bonuses. It'll show you what you can take advantage of. Austin started using it to use Thrive, correct? Yep. Thrive Fantasy, a very cool like prop betting / DFS combination site that we used to work with here at Club Fantasy. So check BetStamp out. And Austin, man, it's 3 weeks in a row. This is what happens when you start off hot, but still above 50%.
Yeah, still above 50%. One shout out about Thrive, I just have to say, they have these really unique contests where you compete against other people on how many prop bets that you can get right, which I think is really fun. They give you 20 prop bets, you pick 10, and each one has a point level assigned to it.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes you can tell like kind of how the odds are leaning because the points will be higher for the over and lower for the under. It's a really fun way to like just a different type of prop betting game. And they have some small size contests. They have some $2 ones. You can max enter them too because it's like two max entries. I've been enjoying that. It's a fun way to do something a little bit different.
They used to, I might be wrong. They used to do a contest or two every week that was free that had a small prize at the end. Did they still do that or did they stop?
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Okay. That must've been when because we got with them right when they came out, very much first started. So they're pretty well established at this point. So
yeah, it's a fun one. But yes, last week we went 2 of 5. So I've continued to kind of regress back to the mean, but I'm still 55% on the year and 55. This week we have a bunch of picks, similar ones that we talked about today, but also some other ones that I'm liking this week. So first off, we've got Nico Collins over 58.5 receiving yards on Underdog. He's up at 59.5 on Thrive, but I still like the over there as well. Jonathan Taylor over 63.5 rushing yards on Underdog. They don't have his rushing line available on Thrive, but they do have a rushing plus receiving line on Thrive, which is 81.5 rushing plus receiving yards. Honestly, I could see Jonathan Taylor rushing for 100 yards this week. I'm like shocked at how low this rushing line is given the matchup. So I'm just like smashing the overs on all of that. I'm taking the Tony Pollard under 53.5 rushing yards, both on Underdog and Thrive. He has not hit this mark in his past 4 games, and the Eagles have not allowed more than 100 rushing yards to opposing offenses in the past 2 games. And I think that Prescott's just going to throw the ball all over this Eagles secondary, so they're not even going to need to run the ball. I've got Saquon Barkley over 75.5 rushing yards, both on Underdog and Thrive. We didn't talk about Barkley, but he has a great matchup this week as well. Chuba Hubbard over 46.5 rushing yards on both sides. And in case you need a non-Jonathan Taylor Thrive bet, I've got Breece Hall over 56.5 rushing yards on Thrive going up against the Chargers. So that should be a good matchup for him.
Just to go back to that Saquon Barkley pick, if Tommy DeVito's in the game, Saquon's the only person who touches the ball. So that's just what you have going on there. Kelly, you shared some big news in the backstage chat before the show started. Oh, was it Austin who did it? I saw it was the Underdog spicy pick, so I assumed it was Kelly. Now available on Android. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's how you know it was me, because I have the Android and I've been waiting for this moment.
Well, there you go. I'm also an Android user, get made fun of for it, Club Fantasy all the time. But Kelly, let's talk to us about your prop picks.
Well, yeah, because I've been quietly typing these in as Austin was talking, and we actually share some of these. So I've got McLaurin, and I've talked about this when I've come across some stats that I like from the NFL capsules that they send out through their communications hub. I like to turn them into props. I was bummed out that the Mark Andrews one didn't hit last week, but I think it's still very fun to stay on these trends. So we've got Terry McLaurin higher than 5 catches because this is going to potentially be his 4th game in a row with 5 or more catches. So we're going for it.
Like it.
Jonathan Taylor, again, shocked, higher than 63.5 rushing yards on Underdog because he is going again on the 4th game in a row, 95 plus rushing yards or more. That's a big discrepancy. So
yeah, that's enormous. Like I said, Austin said it himself. He thinks JT could go for 100 yards in this game. Even if this prop goes up, it's not going up 37 yards.
No, it's crazy. I don't understand, but let's all buy into it. That's fine.
Let's see how high we can get it by Sunday.
Another one that I'm like, what is happening here? This could be the 4th game in a row for Alvin Kamara with 100 or more rushing yards. On Underdog, the higher is 56.5.
Wow.
So I'm buying into that as well. The one I'm not quite sure about, but I'm going to go with it because I'm not exactly sure why, but we're going to go with it. Derek Carr has been passing for over 300 yards. Believe it or not, this could be his 4th game in a row, both home or away, with more than 300 passing yards. We can get him higher, 245.5 on Underdog. And now why not go with like a spicy? Why not? Let's look at a spicy. What do we got in our spiciness? Scroll. Give me some spicies. Jalen Waddle is the first one I came across, so I'm going to go with it. Jalen Waddle for a rushing or a receiving touchdown.
Okay.
That's against Kansas City. That's the one that we're like, that's probably going to be gross, but Jalen Waddle sounds like he could handle it.
Hey, we're all hoping for a good game. If we're getting up at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Kelly time, it better be a damn good game.
You know, that's true. But I just came across one. I think no, I can't jinx it. We're going with Jalen Waddle.
I love it.
Waddle, rushing or receiving, spicy bet there on Underdog.
All right. Before we get you guys out of here, these guys are going to announce their lineup for the Valedictorian Shootout. These may or may not be the lineups they play against you, but this is the lineup where we give Kelly an opportunity to beat Austin. Austin's rolling on the season 7-1. It's the halfway point, Kelly. Anything that's been done can be undone. So I'm confident you're going to take back over. Last week, Austin won 131-95, basically 96. Kelly, me and you scored basically the exact same amount of points because we basically had the exact same lineup. I bought way into the Ravens after talking to you and got nervous about the Patrick Mahomes flu game. Clearly, getting nervous about the flu game was the right call. Pivoting to the Ravens, maybe not the right call. Kelly, I've been jinxing you. I'm going to ask/make you announce your lineup first, and that's going to end the jinx, and you're going to win this week. Let's do it.
End the jinx.
Let's do it.
We're going with Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Nico Collins.
I like it. We didn't talk a lot about him.
Brandin Cooks, Zay Flowers, stacking up the tight ends, Mark Andrews, and Cade Otton.
I love that this has become Kelly's thing, that it's 2 lineups every week. Who you got on defense, Kel?
Atlanta Falcons.
Okay.
That's awesome. Where we get them at a bargain basement.
I say we pick them DraftKings prices, and that's where Atlanta's going to thrive. So
this has just naturally become a happiness hedge for me. So if the Falcons get shredded, I'm like, well, at least a big Kelly.
There you go. I love it.
Okay, so my lineup, I've got CJ Stroud at quarterback at 6,200 on DraftKings. I'm going with the 3 running back build. Very similar running backs. I have Alvin Kamara at 8,100, Jonathan Taylor at 6,400, and Chuba Hubbard in my flex at 5K. At receiver, we have AJ Brown at 8,600. I also have Nico Collins at 5,800. I'm loving that matchup this week. Here's one that we did not talk about. And I intentionally didn't talk about him because everybody's talking about him in DFS this week. Pop Douglas. That is Demario Douglas, who is if you didn't know, a wide receiver for the New England Patriots.
For the New England Patriots.
He is 4K on DraftKings, which is part of why I like him. He's really cheap, and there's the Patriots receiver room is beat up, and the Commanders secondary is awful, and they don't have a pass rush anymore because they traded away their edge.
Traded everybody away.
So feel good about that. I also have Cade Otton at 3K at the tight end spot, and then as we talked about earlier, New York Giants 2,300 as my defense.
All right. So Nico Collins, I think we got brought up in the prop show, but you guys are both betting Nico Collins. So that's one that didn't get a lot of love on the show today, but someone that the people should be looking out for. Also keep an eye on the contest for Henry 8384, who took down the DraftKings contest with 153.96 last week. I believe that maybe one of Henry's first times playing with us, certainly his first win of the season. Speaking of first win of the season, Austin takes down the FanDuel contest with 151.76. So congratulations to both, especially Austin. I always joke with folks, like, if you're worried about us beating up on you, don't. It's the fans who are coming in and just taking this thing down every week. Guys, before we get out of here,
a lot of my money.
Yeah. Guys, before we get out of here, remind everybody where they can find your work, Kelly.
Yeah. One note on that, I know that I get too cute in these contests, so that's why I feel like I never win. So
Kelly's just donating at this point. Kelly is just the kindly person handing you $2 every week.
And if you haven't watched the Sneaky Flex with the Sneaky Girls, amazing. I will say that Rowan's picks, these girls are 8, they're twins, Maisie and Rowan. Rowan's picks were actually really in line with my article this week.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really good.
It sounds like we need to get these girls a WordPress login, get them up on the site.
I know. And I'm like, you're going to end up taking my job. And she goes, well, pretty soon you're going to retire. And then I can. And I'm like, yeah.
From the mouth of babes.
So you can check that out. It's a 15-minute show on Club Fantasy YouTube or Women of Fantasy Football YouTube. Go give us a subscription. Follow me at Kelly and Phoenix for anything else.
Perfect. Austin?
Yeah, first off, make sure you're checking out clubfantasyffl.com. That's where my weekly DFS Cash article post. And then you follow me on X at Austin_FFL. Yeah. It's X.
Every time someone says it, I feel like I have to do it.
I'm admitting defeat.
Weirdo, so,
but also just subscribe to the YouTube page because that's where this show is going to be every week.
There you go. Well, Austin said all the things I need to, but I'm just going to reiterate, hit the damn subscribe button. We need subscribers. It costs you nothing. Do that for us. We do this show. It comes out every single Friday. We also do shows just about every other day of the week. Start sit shows with Kelly and Maisie and Rowan, but another start sit show on Saturdays. We have our shit show. We have our Wednesday flagship show. We have our recap show on Mondays. Ton of stuff. Hit subscribe on YouTube. We very much appreciate it. Listen, everybody's hurt or about to get hurt. The only good news is DFS starts over every week. We'll see you guys next Friday.